nonetheless.
Could I ask you, Greg, one final question in this very interesting area? We have in Australia a peculiar policy, and that is there is a complete prohibition, which was supported by both parties, of a domestic nuclear industry, although we're sitting on an enormous amount of uranium centered around the world, but we forbid the development of a domestic industry. Do you think that this will make a domestic nuclear industry inevitable?
In a word, yes. We have to remember that Australia was one of the three major participants in the West's atomic weapons program in World War II. Australia, after World War II, opted out of that nuclear arrangement, but during World War II, we provided a lot of the thinking on atomic science to the United States and the United Kingdom. We provided, of course, a lot of the original uranium for the Allied victory in World War II with the atomic weapons. But if we are going to have nuclear-powered warships based in Australia, arguably built in the long run in Australia, then we will need to have a nuclear power industry to support that. Initially, we will not be having nuclear warships of our own, I would argue, based in HMAS Stirling near Fremantle in Western Australia. We will probably lease one or two nuclear-powered submarines from either the United Kingdom or the United States, or arguably one or two from each in the long run. But then we will be building our own vessels. Now, to support the leased vessels, we will need to have a nuclear industry capable of understanding the technologies of reactors and the like. If we then build our own nuclear-powered submarines, attack submarines, we will then have to have a nuclear power industry capable of supporting that. Now, I think the government has been very cautious in how it's announced this. In fact, Prime Minister Morrison said that this was not going to be the precursor to establishing a nuclear power industry in Australia. But of course it is and must be. And Australia needs to bite that bullet sooner rather than later if it's to get some freedom to provide low-cost electricity to Australian households. It has allowed its oil and gas, particularly its oil industry, to wither on the vine. We haven't exploited our own petroleum reserves, which are trapped in shale-like rock formations, largely in South Australia. And we have lost much of our petrol refining capability. So if we're going to move to a new generation of low-cost energy, it will either be through our own natural gas utilization or through nuclear power. And arguably, as we can sell our natural gas at good money to foreign customers, the best thing to do is to keep selling that and to use as little as possible of it for our domestic power industry, provided we have other sources of electric power generation. And that can only be nuclear, because it's demonstrable that solar and wind and even tidal-based energy generation cannot ever compensate for the volume of energy which we now need for Australia to prosper in the future.
Well, thank you for those very wise words. This has been Australia Calling, and we've heard the very interesting and wise comments of our friend Greg Copley, who's a very well-renowned Washington-based geostrategist and very much a great bestseller. So thank you.
Thank you.